Hello and welcome to the March Astrology Forecast. Today I'll share some tips for navigating the major aspects this month, including declination aspects. I'll also share some dates for timing important actions. Check out the accompanying blog post at Astrology University for a full list of the major aspects and dates. If you're brand new to declination and you just want to know what it is, check out my blog post, What is Declination, at Astrology University. All right, with that, let's get started. Setting the stage for this month is the long transit of Pluto through the sign of Aquarius, where it hangs out for a few more months before one last visit to Capricorn in September. Pluto and Aquarius shifts are visible everywhere you look right now. Close to home, I'm aware of shifts in some nonprofit organizations who are wrestling with a changing of the guard from old entrenched systems of control and authority to new systems. These shifts are a bit rocky at the moment, with the new systems lacking in maturity and a bit too detached from the understanding of the organization's history. Pluto will be in Aquarius for several years, but it'll take some time to settle into its new rhythm, just as it will take time for changes in organizations like this to adapt. I predict more growing pains ahead. Last month I talked about the farmer strikes in France correlating with Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus. Well, this month we've seen some very different revolutionary activity as the state of Alabama in the United States made a ruling that frozen embryos are to be considered as children. This ruling is sending shockwaves throughout the country right now, true to this dynamic planetary aspect. In more positive news, astronomers have discovered the brightest known object in the universe to date, a quasar 12 billion light years away. Jupiter-Uranus major aspects have historically had strong correlations with scientific breakthroughs, and this is no exception. The Smithsonian Magazine reports that the gargantuan object stretches about 7 light years across, and it puts our sun's luminosity to shame. The quasar shines more than 500 trillion times brighter than the sun in our solar system. These kinds of correlations get me really jazzed up. I can't wait to see what other breakthroughs might come our way over the next couple of months. Richard Tarnas talks about some of the exciting potentials for Jupiter-Uranus aspects in great detail in his amazing book, Cosmos and Psyche. That book inspired me to create a series of events in March and April to coincide with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in real time this year so that we can all make the most of it while it's happening. The first event is an online summit in March at Astrology University, and registration is open for that right now at astrologyuniversity.com/summit, or you might choose to join us at one of our 2 in-person events in Dublin or Berlin. And check out our calendar at astrologyuniversity.com/events for those details, and email us if you need a scholarship. But back to the forecast, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is the major backdrop transit right now. But several planets in Pisces in March highlight another major long-term player, Neptune in Pisces. Now we're coming to the end of Neptune's time in Pisces because it's going to move into Aries in 2025. But we start out this March 2024 with Saturn, the Sun, and Mercury all in Pisces, and they're all moving closer and closer to Neptune as we speak, emphasizing a watery, emotional, and adaptable approach to life that Pisces is famous for. Mercury will get to the conjunction with Neptune first on March 8th, and the Sun follows later this month. I'll talk about both of them. Saturn is more slowly making its way toward Neptune, and that will become a major story in 2025. But turning back to Mercury, have you ever had a day where the wacky communication or classic computer meltdown issues had you wondering if Mercury was retrograde, and then you looked in the ephemeris and saw that actually Mercury was direct and moving at a pretty good speed? If so, look to see if Mercury's making an aspect to Neptune, and that's the case this month as Mercury in Pisces makes a conjunction and parallel with Neptune. The parallel is in close orb by March 6th and exact on March 7th, and the conjunction's exact on March 8th. So you'll want to note those 3 days in the calendar. Mercury's already a bit altered in Pisces, and while our tradition doesn't think the most of this placement, I like to think of it as interesting rather than 100% negative. Mercury in Pisces probably doesn't learn or communicate in a clear, direct, or logical way, but that's not necessarily a problem, especially once a person with this placement starts to understand its gifts. We can't hold the same expectations we set for Mercury in Gemini or Mercury in Virgo or even Aquarius, and in fact maybe they set the standards for us and then we apply those expectations to every other sign. Each placement has its unique gifts. but we tend to preference the clear, logical, systematic version of Mercury, whether that's in education or communication or disseminating information. Now, it's true that indirect communication, or let's say information perceived on other levels than rational or cerebral, aren't really easy to follow. But Mercury in Pisces excels in this terrain that would have any Mercury in Gemini heading for the hills. With Mercury in Pisces, we need to hone senses that we're not taught to exercise in school. We pick up on energy, for instance. We feel into a message, and we communicate non-verbally, and maybe even through interpretive dance. All jokes aside, set a timeout for March 6th to 8th when it comes to actions that require objectivity or clarity in communication. If you have to sign an important financial document on those dates, for instance, see if you can put it off for a bit. And if not, take your time reading it and see if you can get a second pair of eyes to help you get clarity and spot any mistakes. This time in Pisces is better spent thinking creatively, daydreaming, or in reverie. It's a great time for free-form writing and even what we call channeling. Now, if you're an intuitive by trade, from March 6th to 8th especially, the veil should be pretty thin. And if you're really sensitive, it might feel like the floodgates have opened to the other dimensions. If you track symbols and omens, the synchronicities may feel even more clear and numerous than usual. I'm noticing that right now as I prepare this video with Mercury in Pisces in a cazimi conjunction with the Sun. If you're new to astrology, that's just a supercharged conjunction. But getting back to March 6th to 8th, if you're writing, set your logical mind aside and let the writing write you. Sit at the keyboard, tap into source, and see what comes out. You can try to make sense of it later. Act fast though, because Mercury moves into Aries on March 9th, jolting us out of that dreamy transmission. But just as Mercury leaves Pisces for Aries, the Pisces dial turns up even higher this month on March 11th as Venus joins the Pisces crew. And that's a signal to let the cuddle puddles begin. Venus adds a sweetness to this mix as well as a desire to connect with deep presence. Venus is thought to have some special gifts in Pisces. So if you're on the lookout for some good timing charts this month, that should perk up your ears. I'll make some suggestions later. The Sun makes a conjunction and parallel with Neptune on March 17th, fully illuminating this Pisces experience that we're all wading through this month. On March 13th, Mars forms a contraparallel with Jupiter in Taurus, while the Moon is also in Taurus, and applying to square Mars conjunct Uranus. This is a complex brew and might just shake us out of our Piscean dream for a bit. Mars combined with Jupiter doesn't always know when to stop, but the Taurus planets here should slow things down a bit, and that's likely the cause of the friction that we see in the square and contraparallel. Mars is in Aquarius still, and with all that fixity, it's probably wise to take things slowly, which is usually a great antidote to fixity troubles. If you feel stuck here or attached to your position, for instance, you might ask yourself, what are you trying to push through anyway? Waiting it out a bit might mean you can break through later. But maybe not so fast, because next on the menu for Mars is Pisces when Mars joins the cuddle puddle on March 22nd. By then the Sun will be in Aries, which it moves into on March 19th. So if we think of Mars as the Sun's henchman, the Sun gets fired up in Aries just in time for Mars to want to take a nap. Rick Levine once said that having Mars in Pisces is like trying to hammer a nail with a fish. It's a setup for a big mess if you're trying to take fast, direct action. But Mars in Pisces has its gifts too, and it works best when inspired or driven to help the lost or those in need. So you might find those intentions welling up. Backing up to March 20th, we have a triple planet aspect to watch out for as Venus makes a parallel to Saturn, while Mercury makes a contraparallel to both of them. This triple planet lineup happens with Mercury in feisty Aries, while Venus is in that romantic Pisces dreamland. Meanwhile, Saturn is still trying to work out those boundary issues. Mercury in Aries wants us to cut through the BS and be a straight talker, but this can really offend the sensibilities of sensitive Venus in Pisces. So tread carefully with your words on March 20th while honoring your desire to say what's most burning your tongue. With that, let's get to the electionals, or in other words, some suggested dates for good timing. Watch my video, What is Electional Astrology, if you're new and you want to learn more about it. But essentially, electional astrology is the art of choosing a good time for an important action. Since Jupiter's currently in Taurus, we get even better than usual juju every time the moon's in Cancer and Taurus, because both of those aspect Jupiter in nice ways. This month, the moon goes into Taurus March 12th through 14th, and Cancer for March 17th and 18th, and the morning of the 19th. The moon in Cancer will also be out of bounds, giving it a bit of a turbocharge. As I mentioned earlier, this month we get some extra icing to play with as Venus enters Pisces, completing a sextile from the other side of Taurus. If you have a really important action that has to be scheduled in March, see if you can wait for Venus to go into Pisces, which makes it available for both of those great moon signs. If you know electional and you're worried about Venus applying to Saturn, you'll miss out on both of those moons, but you might think that it's worth waiting out in order to get to the free and clear sextile to Jupiter on the 22nd and 23rd, and even a bit of the early morning on the 24th. So to recap, some good dates to try this month could be March 13th, 17th, 18th, 22nd, 23rd, and the morning of the 24th. You'll have to wrangle those charts a little bit as usual, and the dates may vary depending on your time zone. But if you'd like to learn how to do that wrangling, you're just in time because we've got an electional course with expert Mary Shea starting up again in early April. All right, well that takes me to the end of this month's forecast. Check out our upcoming events calendar for some great courses to help you learn astrology and tap into the exciting aspects coming up. I hope you're able to make good use of the planetary energies this month, and until next time, take good care.